The next data type that we are going to cover are strings. Strings can be defined in Python using single quotation marks or double quotation marks. So let's create some string variables. So let's create one called alteration, and let's call it potassic. And let's create another one called lithology and call it bracha. And then we can always print alteration and lithology on screen. So that's potassic and bracha. So there are a few operations with strings that are very useful to us. The first of it that I want to cover is the concatenation of strings. So we can combine strings. So let's create a new string called domains. And the domain is going to be the combination of alteration and lithology. So domain has alteration and lithology, which were combined to form that new variable. In this case, we would like to add a space in between the two. So in that case, I can just concatenate a new string, which is just a space. So now I have potassic space bracha. Another way of defining strings within Python are convenient for long strings. So these are multi-line strings. I can use triple single quotation marks or triple double quotation marks. So in this case, we're going to create a long string, which we are going to call message. And it's going to say geostatistics is a branch of applied statistics focused on the probabilistic study of spatial phenomena. So this is a very long string, and I can just print that on the screen by printing the message. So this long string is all contained on this single variable called message. Another useful methods of strings. So everything in Python is an object. And as an object, it has properties, it has its own functions, which we call methods, which in sometimes are very useful methods to use. So there are a few methods within strings that we use all the time. So for instance, I can say name as a string, and I can do dot upper, and this will convert all the string to uppercase. I can do capitalize, and this will capitalize the first letter of the string. I can do find and add a character, so you will find the index of that character on the string. So the first one is index 0, the second one is index 1. So for instance, if I'm looking for E, that's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be index 3. So those are very useful ones. So going back to the domain string. So domain string is potassic space bracha. Another function that we have within strings is dot split. So with dot split, if I press Shift Tab to look into the function, I see that the first argument is a separator. So for instance, if I want to split this string, which is potassic space bracha, into two strings that contains potassic and bracha, I need to split based on that space. So if I just split with a separator as the space and run this cell, it will create a list of strings, which is the result of splitting this string based on that space. So I can print that on screen. So this will just print the result of that function on the screen. And let's take a look at a couple other methods. In this case, we have domain, and domain again is potassic breccia. So let's say we want to find domains that ends with a particular string. So let's say breccia. So in this case, domain indeed ends with the string breccia. So the result of this call is true. So this represents the correct case. Let's say now that we do not match this exactly. So we have breccia, where now we have a uppercase R. So now this does not exactly match the breccia string. So in that case, the result is false. And you can see how we can combine these functions in order to give a certain result. So let's say that the test I want to do here should not be sensitive to the case. So I can transform everything to lowercase on both sides. So it's comparing the domain but with lowercase, which is now breccia with lowercase, with this string but converted to lowercase. So this test is now case insensitive. So as long as the letters here, the characters here, regardless of upper or lower case, matches the ending characters of domain, it will return true. So let's go back to the original so that it demonstrates a failing case, which is gonna be our incorrect case in here. Individual letters or characters on our strings can be accessed by index. So let's say, for instance, we want to access the first index. We can do that by using square braces and accessing the index. So the first index is going to be 0. So that gives us the first letter of our domain string, which is P. The second index is going to be 1, which is O. So in this case, we want the first. And another thing that we can use is to access the last index, regardless of the size of the string. For that, we can use a negative number, -1, and that will give us access to the last letter of that string. We can also access indexes slicing through our string. So for instance, if I say I want to see the first 2 indices, then I can start from 0 and go up to 2. So this is always the index that's not shown. So in this case, it's gonna go 0, 1, and when it's 2, it's gonna stop. It's not gonna show the index 2. So the result of this is the first 2 letters or 2 indices of my domain string. We can also show the first 2 indices with a more compact way by removing the 0. So if I do not specify the starting index it's always gonna be assumed to be 0. So this should produce the same result. And lastly, if I want to slice but the end of the string, so I will start from the -3 position and then go up to the end, so I do not need to specify. This will slice the last 3 indices of my string. So that's gonna be the 3 last letters of Brecha.